If we can call the meeting to order, that would be good, so I will. And we have Mr. Coley, please note that Commissioner Small is on his way, otherwise all other members are here. We have drafts of minutes before us. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as they were submitted. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All right. We have four resolutions today that we will take in turn, and so and we have resolutions related to our fiscal 22 budget, which some of us really look forward to, and some don't. But we'll let you decide which group you're in, but make sure you don't tell Martin, because we want him to know we all love him.
Keeping a list.
But we'll turn this over to Gabe.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, as we do every May, it's a lot of appropriations commitments for the fiscal year 22 budget year. You heard last month from Mark a lot of the details about this next year's budget, and so today we'll be asking for your authorization for bond issuing. Also included is a 2% rate increase in our water division, and so I'll turn it over to Mark, our CFO, for all the details.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Today we do present for the board's consideration several official action items related to the proposed budget and the funding of the budget. We also have commitment appropriations that we will be presenting for your consideration as well. And as you may recall, that allows KUB to enter in contracts and basically covers us. We have to have an appropriation for dollars we commit to spend beyond next fiscal year, and that's what the subject of commitment appropriations is. So we'll start out with a high-level overview of the proposed budget. In total, it is $934 million. That is for all four utility systems combined. And that does represent a decrease of $28 million, or 3%, from our current fiscal year budget. And the total capital investment provided in the budget is $178 million. $126 million of that is for our Century 2 infrastructure programs. And there is $6 million included in the budget for environmental stewardship initiatives. Some of those include $1 million for home weatherization for our low-income households in our area, and also $1 million for the water efficiency program. We've changed the name on that. It used to be the toilet replacement program. We've now expanded. Doesn't really sound too good. We've expanded the scope of that to include more than just that. So it's going to be, we're looking to rename that, but we'll call it the water efficiency program today. But $1 million is included in the budget for that. And then $1.5 million for our community solar project that is still steadily getting underway, and we're looking forward to that. As far as funding of the budget, majority, over 90%, is going to come from system revenues of the four utility systems. But we do have a 2% water rate increase that is included in the proposed budget. You may recall that that was previously planned to be 5%, but due to some capital project deferrals and also savings from the bond refinancing that we completed last month, we were able to reduce that to 2%. And then we have $28 million in new bonds. That's $12 million in wastewater to help fund the wastewater capital budget, $16 million for the electric division. We are not requesting official action or authorization on the $16 million in electric bonds today, because that amount might change pending the decision to move forward with the enhanced grid modernization program and the provision of broadband services as well. Which takes me truly to the last bullet on this particular slide. You'll note that we did give a presentation back in March on the enhanced grid modernization program, but it's not included in the budget, the dollars for FY22. Again, that is pending a decision by the board and also by City Council of whether we would proceed with broadband services. If those approvals do occur, we would come back to this board late summer, early fall to amend the electric division budget, and also for the board to adopt a budget for the fiber division, and then you would have bonds and potential rate action as well in that. So that's a high-level overview. Looking at the total budget by utility system, we're really going to talk about major cost components here in a few minutes, but just as a reminder as to what the budgets are for each system, and as you know, each system has its own budget and is self-sustaining in that budget. For electric, we're proposing $596 million. Gas is $131 million. Water is $79 million, and wastewater is $128 million for the 934 total. And now we'll look at the cost components. Wholesale energy, $464 million. That's about half of the total proposed budget, as it's usually in that range. That includes $406 million to be paid to TVA for the anticipated purchase of about 5.7 billion kilowatt hours of electric power to meet the needs of our electric system customers. So that's the lion's share of it. We also have $58 million in the proposed budget. That'll go for the purchase of about 11.7 million decatherms of natural gas to meet our customer demands, and also covers costs that we pay to the interstate pipelines for both the transportation of the gas and the storage of the gas as well. But in total, $464 million. The O&M piece of the budget is $167 million. As is usually the case there, about half of that is for labor-related expenses. Our budget calls or funds a full-time staff level of 1,053 KUB employees in the upcoming fiscal year. The O&M portion of that payroll is $62 million. We also have $11 million in the budget for active employee medical costs, medical claims. On that, as you know, we are a self-funded health care plan for our employees. And then we have $9 million in the budget for post-employment benefits. Three components to that: $4 million to contribute to our pension trust fund per the latest actuarial valuation we have. That is a required contribution. $2 million for our OPEB trust fund, and that's to cover post-employment health care costs. And then $3 million for our employer, our share of the 401k, or our 401k matching contribution for our employees. So that all comes together in that labor-related component of, essentially add those up, it's 73 and 9 is $82 million. Some other notable expenditures in the O&M budget are for vegetation management, $12 million. You may recall Mr. Williams talked about that last month. We are increasing the amount of circuit tree trimming from 600 miles to 750 miles in this budget. So the budget is a little bit higher at $12 million. And we're stair-stepping that. A couple years out in our electric long-range plan, we plan to increase that to 1,000 miles. So that cost will go up to about $14 million in current year dollars. So the big focus there is just over time, as prices went up for trimming, we kept our budgets fixed, but the amount of miles trimmed went down. We are now going back to a level that we think we need to be at to maintain strong reliability on our electrical distribution system. A few other items. We've talked about the home weatherization for low income. That's $1 million again. One thing I do want to mention about that, when you combine that investment with what our customers contribute through the Rounded Up program and also TVA matching funds, it's about $2 million that will be put forward for home weatherization in the next fiscal year. And based upon historical cost, that would allow for the weatherization of about 200 low-income households in the area. So that is certainly a good thing. And then just some other cost. $9 million is in the budget for utility expense, and most of that is electric power that operates our water and wastewater treatment plants and our remote sites, our pumping stations, our lift stations for wastewater service, as we call it. So that's a $9 million price tag. And then chemicals that we use to treat water and wastewater flows are $3 million in the proposed budget. That
Mark, tell me again
totals
what's in the
167.
utilities number.
Utilities number, that's primarily, well, that's really utility costs for all our facilities, you know, that we essentially pay ourselves for the most part. But the big part of that is the plants that use a lot of electric power for the water and wastewater treatment.
Mark,
Yes, ma'am.
does TVA match KUB's contribution or our client's contribution?
TVA matches a portion of our contribution. There's actually a formula that the TVA board has adopted for that. Basically, and they approve that each year. So we're allowed to invest up to 0.2% of our electric system revenues, which is roughly $1 million. And then TVA has a formula that they match that, and it's like $365,000 on that. But it's all formulaic based, but it's year by year, according to what TVA's budget can handle and what their board approves.
The important thing there, I think, is that we are asking our ratepayers to help those who are less fortunate through their bills. And that's a $1 million contribution that all ratepayers pay to help those who
Now,
can't.
one thing to maybe point out when you look for comparisons, and I hope I have this right, when we were doing some research, I think statewide, the funding for home weatherization that the state received for, I think it's 2020, maybe it's 2019, was around $4 million total for the entire state. And you look to see what we're doing here in Knoxville for our low-income customers in that regard, I think that's fairly impressive.
So Mark, when you
Yes, sir.
So you said the budget. If you go back to, so you showed the individual utilities budgets, right? So
That's correct.
electric, water, gas, wastewater, right?
Yes.
But then when you go back to O&M, was that just for electric, or was that through all
No, that's
systems?
for everything.
Through all
I'm sorry.
systems?
Yes.
Okay,
So
now
the
I see it
wholesale
broken down.
energy, we talked about 464.
Right, okay.
O&M 167, we'll talk about capital debt and taxes, and we're doing these amounts, right?
Okay, because on the other one, it wasn't separated, so it was kind of this huge number, and I
Yes.
didn't see it.
Yeah, I'm
Because I
sorry.
wanted to know, by utility system, this chart, so I see what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you can see the O&M portion, so the electric
right.
portion of O&M,
The
you know, it's about 40–45%, something such as that.
Yeah,
Electric has the highest on the capital side, which the biggest system, it covers Knox and parts of 6 other counties.
Mhm.
And then debt service, not surprising, wastewater is the highest because we have under $500 million in total outstanding debt for wastewater. And then electric's going to have the highest share of the in lieu of tax payments, just because of the size of the system again.
Okay, that was helpful.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to capital, $178 million. I was going to talk through the system components, but we just saw that. And I just want to mention some of the notable investments in the capital budget. And again, we touched on many of these last month, but one of the keys, especially for our underground utility Century 2 programs, is pipe replacement, pipe rehab. We have $33 million in the budget for that for FY22. That provides for 12 miles of gas main to be replaced or rehabbed, 11 miles of wastewater collection system pipe, and 9 miles of water system pipe, all part of just a continued investment through our Century 2 programs. We have $29 million in the capital budget for growth, for customer growth related projects. Part of that is to put facilities in place. We're anticipating the addition of 4,000 customers in FY22, so part of it goes for that. Part of it is strategic investments in growth, looking at future developments and expanding our systems in certain areas for that, particularly for the gas system, but we do it for all 4 systems. And then it's just other investments in system capacity, increasing system capacity over time. So $29 million in the budget related to customer growth in some manner. And then when we look at individual system projects, one of the big projects for our water system, in particular for our water plant, is the filter project at MBW off Riverside Drive. You may recall from last month when Mr. Haygood talked about it, about a $50 million price tag for that project over several years. There's $11 million in the proposed budget for FY22 for that project. Similarly, on the wastewater side, a big project is the replacement of the Jones Street wastewater pump station. It definitely has some age on it and is in need of being replaced. That is also a multi-year project, and we have $9 million in the proposed budget for FY22 for that. And then on the electric side, several projects. One of the big ones is on the substation front, and that is the new electric in-feed substation project off of Western Avenue. You may recall we had a customer meeting for that just a few weeks ago. That's a total $17 million project. There's $3.5 million in the proposed budget for that. And as we've already touched upon, we have $1.5 million in the budget for our community solar project. So that's capital. Debt service, $84 million. And what is debt service? That's simply principal and interest payments on our outstanding debt, of which we have about $1 billion in outstanding bonds right now. If you look at that by utility system, we glanced at that a minute ago. Wastewater's got the highest at $34 million, followed by electric at $25 million, water $14 million, gas $11 million, because gas is the lowest amount of outstanding debt that we have. Breaking it down by principal and interest, $44 million in principal payments, so those are debt retirements. As into a bond series mature, next fiscal year we'll pay that off, and there's $40 million in interest payments on our outstanding debt. We are proposing, or this budget anticipates the issuance of $28 million in new bonds, $16 million electric, $12 million wastewater, but we're going to pay off the $44 million. So you have a net reduction of $16 million in this budget in total debt, which is also a good thing. And really the final piece of the budget is our in lieu of tax payments and federal payroll taxes combined, and that's just under $42 million in the proposed budget. And in lieu of tax payments to the various taxing jurisdictions is the biggest component of that, $35.3 million in total. $22.8 million will go to the city of Knoxville, $11.4 million to Knox County, and $1.1 million to the other taxing jurisdictions combined. In total, that's about an increase of $1 million or 3% over current year payments to those taxing jurisdictions combined. And then the last component is our federal payroll taxes of $6.3 million. So that is the budget. Talk a moment about how we propose to fund it, and that's really on the right-hand side of the slide there. And again, most of it is going to be funded by system revenues, $865 million or 93% of the proposed budget. That does include incremental revenues from the 2% water rate increase in that piece of the pie. $28 million for the bonds, and $41 million in general fund cash on hand. And you can see the footnote that we are deferring action on the electric bonds. So talk about the wastewater bonds just for a moment. $12 million. We are proposing that they mature over a period of 30 years, as we have been doing for some time. It would be, so the final maturity would be April of 2051. We are proposing that they be paid back on a levelized structure, which simply means you're paying the same amount of debt service each year over the 30 years, although the mix of the principal and interest varies over time, just like your home mortgage, basically, on that. Excuse me. My voice goes at times. We have budgeted an interest rate of 3.5% on that, so that translates to interest cost of $4.6 million on the bonds. 3.5% is fairly conservative based upon the current marketplace. When we refinanced wastewater bonds over roughly the same time period, it's a little short of 30 years, last month the true interest cost was under 2%. So we anticipate to do better than that on that. Important to note that the bonds are secured solely by the revenues of the wastewater system, and that means that even though the bonds are issued in the name of the city per statute, the city has no obligation whatsoever for the repayment of the bonds. That's always important when we go to council to get approval, and they want us to reiterate that. But it's all on the KUB wastewater system revenues. And then the bonds are secured solely by, well, we already talked about that. One thing I want to mention about the total debt for wastewater, we're beginning the year at $476 million. We will pay off $14 million. You got the $12 million new bonds, so we'll end the year at $474 million. And then for the professional fees for issuing the bonds, you've seen this chart many, many times. It just lists by the firms, the companies that we use to help facilitate the sale of the bonds, while we're estimating the fees we will to pay to them, and it's just under $114,000, a little less than 1% of the par value. and talk a few minutes about the proposed water rate increase. Again, you'll recall that we had planned for it to be 5%. It has been lowered to 2%. One thing I wanted to mention, though, so the board will recall, before the pandemic, we were anticipating having a 5% water rate increase in the current fiscal year, FY21, and a 5% in FY22. So a total of 10% over those 2 fiscal years. Obviously, in FY21, we had no rate increase at all. We got rid of that, and then we've reduced this to 2%. So what pre-pandemic was planned to be 10% for those 2 years has been reduced to 2%. As far as the impact on our residential customers, for the average customer or the customer who uses the system average, which is about 3,700 gallons of water, the impact on the residential bill is 65 cents. But it will vary since we're applying the rate solely to the usage rate and not to the basic service charge. The impact will vary based upon the amount of your usage, and the next chart will bring that out a little bit more. And then just want to mention that the rate increase, we are proposing it be effective in July. So if so, then it would be reflected on customer bills beginning in August of 2021.
And Mark, the ability to revise those rates downward were a result of us shifting some capital projects primarily, is that correct?
That is correct. Capital project deferrals was the biggest reason that we were able to do that, but also the savings from the bond refinancing as well brought several $1 million of savings into the water long-range plan, and we were able to take advantage of that. So really both those factors.
Right.
So looking at the residential bill impacts, right in the middle, close, you can see the system average is about $37.50. That's 500 cubic feet. The bill today is $27.95. It'll go up to $28.60, an increase of 65 cents. But I want to point out that if you look at below that level, you've got really close to 50% of our total residential customers using less than the system average, so they will have less than the 65-cent increase on the monthly bill. And for example, we've got 15% that use about 1,500 gallons a month on average. Their increase is 20 cents. And we showed this chart last month on the residential bill comparison. Basically shows how our rates compare to the local utility districts that provide water service surrounding our area. And we're middle of the pack, basically. You can see our bills going up from $27.95 to $28.60. So we're very close, just a little bit higher than Northeast Knox and West Knox Utility District, but quite a bit lower than Knox Chapman and Hallsdale Powell. And then moving on to the commitment appropriations, the amount that we are requesting for next fiscal year is $101 million. You can see the amount by utility system. And basically what this is due for, mostly it's just multi-year projects in which you cross over fiscal years, and we need to have an appropriation for what goes beyond June 30th of 2022. And then those are just some of the samples or examples of the projects that are driving the commitment appropriations. And I know in your packets we provided detail of the various projects and the amounts and all of that. But in total, $101 million. And you can see on there some specific projects such as the filter project, the substation project, Western Avenue, again, multi-year projects driving the need for that. And that concludes my comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have before you take a vote on the official action items.
Question for you. And I guess it was one of the first slides, we said that the FY22 is down $28 million
or 3%, yes.
From FY21. I guess I don't have a good understanding of why it's down that amount.
It's
Is capital?
It's capital.
Okay, that's.
Capital's down $33 million. And really the driver there, Commissioner, is on the wastewater side of the house, on the wastewater division, because we spent so much on the biologically enhanced high rate clarification project at Kauai. It's hard for me to say that with my voice crack. The BHRC project at Kauai, we spent so much of that in FY21 in the current fiscal year, so FY22 the overall budget just goes down. That's the main driver there.
The other question I had was, any update on the pipeline fees? That they had
Yes, and
They
that is.
dropped, it dropped a big increase on us, and we come back, it was in negotiations, and.
Yes, yes.
Any result on that?
I don't think that has been finalized as of yet, but there's still some back and forth with the pipeline and the customer groups on that. But we continue to pay, obviously based upon what went into effect back in, I think, January or February
And that was
of this
10%
year.
Increase?
I'm trying to remember, the impact on customer bills was several dollars. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to end up settling at a 25 to 30% of what was put into place on that. They typically go high, as you might expect. FERC allows those higher rates to go into effect, and then there's a settlement process. But we will get that money back. It's not like that's just lost money. We always pay at the higher rate. I'm trying to remember the percentage increase on that. I'll probably have to follow up with you on that. It was not insignificant on that, but it is, the amount is reflected in the proposed budget, but we are still in the negotiation phase on that. But it will not be at that same level. It will be a fraction of that.
Did you lose your voice yelling at the budget team? Is that what happened?
Yelling at the Cincinnati Reds throughout
Yeah.
the week, that's part of it as well, probably.
So if we do come back at a better rate, which we will, after the negotiations, how will that be reflected back to our customers?
It just flows through the purchase gas adjustment mechanism that the board has set up. So, changes in purchase gas costs, whether they go up or they go down, they just immediately flow back to our customers through the
Through their
PGA.
bill.
There's a mechanism set up that the board approved some time ago. The rates adjust each month based upon current purchase gas costs. Same thing for TVA rates, purchase power side as well. That way we don't have to come back to the board every time the rate's going to change because of that, because it happens every month, yeah.
Voting? Do you have a slide for each
I
of the
do.
resolutions?
There is one thing I want to point out about Resolution 934 on the water rates that I didn't touch upon, and I think this is a good thing. We have put language in all the residential and non-residential water schedules, and we've also done it for wastewater as well, that allows for future billings to be in gallons as opposed to hundreds of cubic feet.
Good.
I mean, because face it, I think sometimes people get bills and, what's a CCF? What the heck is that? Everybody understands a gallon.
Yeah.
So we've put a conversion factor into the water and wastewater rate schedules that allow for that,
That's great.
that billing. So
That's good customer service,
I just
think.
wanted to touch upon that because that is part of what you're approving today as well.
All right, we'll entertain a motion and a second for Resolution 1434 on first reading. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So
Second?
seconded. Mr. Coley, would you please call the roll?
Any more discussion?
Any more discussion? Do we have any visitors who wish to speak on this? No, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Coley.
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero, Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
All right, Resolution 1434 has passed on first read.
On Resolution 1435, do I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1435 on first and final reading?
So moved. Second.
Second. Do we have visitors who wish to speak to the resolution? Mr. Coley, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Yes.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1435 is passed.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion and a second for Resolution 1436 on first and final reading. Do we have visitors who would like to speak to the resolution? Other discussion from the board? If not, Mr. Coley, please call the roll. I'm sorry, motion, please.
Move to
Got a
approve.
motion?
Second.
Second, thank you. All right. Mr. Coley?
This is Resolution 1436. Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson-Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1436 has passed.
Move on to Resolution 1437. I'll entertain a motion and a second on first and final reading.
Move approval.
Second.
Second. Do we have any visitors who'd like to comment? Do we have any other discussion from board members? Hearing none. Mr. Coley?
Commissioner Askew,
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson-Brown,
Aye.
Commissioner Small,
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1437 has passed.
A quick clarification. We read, it was first and final reading on 35, 36, and 37. And on 34 was just the first reading?
First reading.
Or is that?
That is correct. There
just
will be
making sure.
second reading will be June 17th.
That's correct.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you for clarification.
Now we'll have a discussion on Resolution 1438. Mr. Bolus?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, as you recall, we have submitted our business plans to the TVA and the Tennessee State Comptroller about our broadband plan. We have received feedback from both of those agencies, and we want to give you an update on that. And we want to talk about the next steps in the process as we've been discussing for the last year. So I'd like to recognize Jamie Davis, Vice President and Assistant to the CTO, to give you an update on the broadband plan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see you all. Again, as Mr. Bolus just stated, last time we were together, we requested your approval to be able to submit those plans to the State of Tennessee and the State of Tennessee Comptroller, which are our two regulatory authorities in this process as kind of codified by state law. We'll go over those just briefly today and then talk about those next steps as you contemplate giving approval for those next steps today. So first on the agenda today is to talk a little bit about the TVA review. Again, TVA primary focus here is to take a look at the impact to the electric division and the impact to our electric ratepayers. A lot of factors evaluated, a very deep financial look as it relates to the amount of, in this case, our plans called for an enhanced grid modernization plan along with a loan to start up the fiber division. And then one of their key factors is to take a look and be sure that fiber would be paying its fair share as it relates to that electric division. Pleased to report through that review, great coordination and collaboration between KUB and TVA staff, and we received a letter from them in early May saying that indeed our plan had been approved. No cross-subsidization concerns in that regard, and actually a couple of really nice comments. One, they just rated the plan, it was a low risk to the electric ratepayers in that regard, that the provisions set forth in the plan did not present a significant risk to the electric division and its ratepayers. And then and a very nice compliment saying it was the best plan they had seen. Very transparent, very thorough, very scientific in our methods in which the way the fiber division would pay back and pay its fair share to the electric division. And so we were very pleased to hear that feedback in that regard from TVA. Any questions on that one? From the State of Tennessee Comptroller perspective, again, codified in state law that we submit our business plans there. A very detailed look not only at that relationship between electric and fiber, but again, much more so on the prospective feasibility of a broadband endeavor is what they took a look at. We submitted those plans the day after this board authorized us to do so, and within fairly short order, a month or so, the comptroller actually reached out to Gabe and asked if we could meet with him. And so a few of us traveled down to Nashville to meet with the comptroller on April 7th. A lot of great questions. You could tell it was a very thorough review, very detailed review. It was, I'll call it more a clarification or confirmation rather than clarification, if you will. It was good that they understood our plan. Again, they paid us the compliment of saying it was very transparent in that regard. A lot of questions around items in which the opposition had raised with them as well, too. They had met with the comptroller, expressed some concerns about us entering into this business. And it was evident that we were in the process of answering some of those questions as well, too. Even with all that being said, statutorily, as we reminded this board in March, they have 60 days to respond. They took the full 60 days of that statutory provision, and we got a call from Comptroller Mumpower, in which Gabe and I took and received that our plan had been deemed feasible. The options there were feasible, not feasible, can't tell. So we received the best of the three options in that particular regard. And again, Comptroller Mumpower complimented KUB, saying that we were a well-run entity in our standard utility operations and didn't see any reason why this endeavor wouldn't be successful in the long run. So that's the Comptroller report. So before I shift gears and taking a look at indeed what would be those next steps, any questions on those, the feedback that we received from the regulatory bodies? And I believe in your packet you have both letters, both documents there from the Comptroller and from TVA.
And for clarification's purpose, if we were to vote yes on this, the budget that we just approved, you would then come back to us with an amended budget. And I think it's what, 16 million, I think you said, in electric bonds that we would need to approve?
Yes, there'd be several changes. One to the electric division budget to help fund the fiber optic network, that portion in FY '22.
Right.
So we would amend the electric division budget just for expenditures. And then we would come back with what we believe the total bond issue. $16 million is just what we really need to help fund Century 2 next year. That amount will be somewhat higher. If the approvals go through, it'd be more than $16 million. And be closer to probably in the $70 million range that we would come back with. And then you would have some rate action impacts as well. So be a lot coming back in August if everything goes through and everything's approved. It would be the electric division budget being amended, a new budget for the fiber division, since the fiber division doesn't currently exist. So you would be approving the initial budget appropriations for the fiber division, just for FY '22, of course. The electric bond issue would be higher, and then the rate actions. So there'd be several items.
Have we seen a proposed fiber budget, division budget? I don't recall ever seeing.
It would be part of the business plan that we had submitted there. It has a pro forma of 3 years
Okay, so
for
that's
that.
what we're using.
We can go over that in detail if we need to.
I believe we presented that in March.
Yes, correct.
The plan for what the fiber would be over a 10-year period itself. We didn't just pick out 1 year, but it was for the whole
It was for the whole 10
long-range
years,
plan
yeah, but
for
I'm
10
saying.
years.
Yep.
But what you come back with next month would be for just FY 20?
Just FY '22.
Okay,
And it
that's
would
what I was
likely be in
asking.
August if all the approvals go forward. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great setup for where we are in this process. So indeed, a couple steps before we do get to that budgetary process. But as you can see on screen, the first two that have a green check mark there, that's March and May. And we've completed those steps. And where we are today is your consideration for board input. Commissioner Small set me up well for this slide. The other steps that we'll go through is if indeed this board and basically accepts the findings of the Comptroller, endorses these plans, and decides to, as the code says, take that next step in the process, it is holding a public hearing. Once we hold that public hearing, there are still 2 official steps before ultimately the fiber division can be established. One would be one more vote, a final authorization by this board, creating that division upon a successful vote by City Council, and it'd be a recommendation to City Council. And then that last step there, you would see that City Council would accept it. Then, after that, if that proceeded as planned, would be the creation of the division's budget and the authorization and amendment of the electric division's budget. So, very good. So, in today's action, it really leaves us with the details of that action is effectively a public forum, and we've talked a little bit about that. It's required by state law in order to have that public forum. We would notice that as a board action, just like we notice these meetings. It states that there's an intent to proceed in the plan, not necessarily a final authorization, but indeed a legal step to take the next step in moving forward with that authorization procedure. Provisions of the business plan and a summary of those will be provided in that notice. A very brief summary as well as a link to the documents that we have on our website, which includes the entire business plan for the public's review in that particular regard, and then the announcement of that public forum. You may recall we've communicated we wanted to give folks an anticipation of our success of receiving a good report from the Comptroller and TVA, and we want to be able to give plenty of ample time, and so we've already noticed that through informal channels. After this board takes action, we will reinforce that with a proper legal notice as well too. So what does that public forum look like? Well, it's an official board meeting in that regard. No official action will be taken at that board meeting. There'll be a call to order. We'll present briefly the details of that business plan so that we kind of know what we're all talking about. But the focus really is to hear from our customers and concerned citizens about KUB's thoughts there. So that would really take up the bulk of the evening, targeting very much like what we do in public forum here, 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how many folks sign up that want to speak. We want to hear from the most people, both for and against in that plan, or just comments and questions. We do anticipate, as we're seeing right now, a lot of folks just have questions about it. They want to know what and when and where and what all is involved in this. And so there won't be a lot of back and forth at this particular meeting, but staff will stay on hand, obviously, to as folks finish their comments and are on sidebars, we'll be glad to answer questions, and then definitely stay after the meeting to be able to do that.
Jamie,
Yes, sir.
in that meeting, will the meeting continue as long as we have speakers? So if we have 100 speakers at 5 minutes, it's a long time.
We would hope,
What's-
we're trying to gauge that based upon folks that register, and so I think we'll make those decisions to try to keep it to a reasonable time. If it's a wonderful opportunity for folks to come out and express their opinion, if it runs too long, we'll hold another meeting, honestly. I think,
Because if we move to another meeting.
yeah, we'll want to try to hear folks, but we very well may, again, at the board's discretion, run that meeting as long as we can to try to hear the most folks. And I think there's some things that we could perhaps do, if you can say what you were going to say in 5 minutes and 3 minutes, then we can hear more folks. And so I think we'll visit with the board about your discretion about how we want to establish the rules for that meeting based upon the folks that sign up. You don't have to sign up. We want you to sign up for COVID protocols as well as just a gauge of that. We're encouraging folks that want to speak at that meeting to let us know. But we will still accept folks that just show up to attend as well too, and try to accommodate them. So, but we are indeed monitoring that particular issue. So as far as the meeting details itself, of some of the logistics, it is scheduled right now for Wednesday, the May 26th, so just a little under a week from now at 6 o'clock at the Grand Event Center, and that's the Knoxville Expo Center. It's actually titled as 2 different buildings. We learned that as part of this process. But if you're familiar with that on the Clinton Highway deal there where the old Lowe's used to be, indeed that Expo Center, the Grand is on the front side of that building, and that's where we will hold it. We're seeing great pre-registration already. A number of folks have said they want to come and attend, if nothing else, just to hear more about it. But we are also communicating a lot of the information through our dedicated webpage there. You can see it at kub.org/broadband. So we've had a lot of hits on that page of great interest of hearing about the information that's on our website. And we know that some folks are busy and schedules may not allow for them to be there that evening, and so we've also allowed for many other opportunities for folks to be able to give us feedback. You'll see there on the screen, we have a dedicated email address. We've actually given them opportunities via that webpage to say, submit us the good old snail mail if you want to write us a letter, or if you want to do even just to call us and leave us a recorded phone message, we're doing that as well. We are receiving for sure a lot of emails and even some of the recorded voicemails. And in your packet today, we've left you a copy of all the emails and maybe even transcribed voicemails. I don't think we received any written letters. But all that is in your packet today to go ahead and just give you a feel for the feedback that we are getting as it relates to our plan. So again, trying to avail opportunities for our customers and concerned citizens to give us feedback in a number of different channels. And so far, they've been taking us up on that opportunity.
Is that meeting being streamed?
No, we will record it because we're kind of off-site and it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. We're going to record it, but it will not be streamed. Is our current plan. Other questions? So where that leads us today, again, for your consideration of Resolution 1438, and again, some of this is a resolution or language provided in the resolution today, kind of way the TCA is written, is that the board will be accepting the findings of the Comptroller's Office review, endorsing our business plan, and then authorizing that approval process and setting an official date and time and authorizing the notice of this meeting as well too. So glad to answer any other questions that relates to broadband.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of positive emails and things people contacted us for. Is there anyone other than companies that wrote and said they weren't in favor?
To date, No, honestly. That's the easiest way to answer your question. Very little folks in opposition of this, a lot of positive support from, honestly, all across the service territory, from rural to urban. It seems to be a very positive momentum right now on these plans.
Including governmental officials from our adjoining counties who are hoping to get some form of broadband to their customers. Okay, I'll entertain a motion and a second on Resolution 1438. Come on,
Second.
second, okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Any further discussion from the board? Hearing none. Mr. Coley?
Commissioner Askew.
Aye.
Commissioner Caballero. Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Small.
Aye.
Commissioner Worden.
Aye.
Resolution 1438 has passed.
There is no president's report this month, and so I'll move straight to the announcements. You all know that that the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Commemorative Commission is honoring KUB as their 2021 MLK Diversity Champion Award honoree at their leadership luncheon on June 17. So we have moved our meeting time to 8:30 a.m. to allow staff and commissioners to attend the luncheon, and I'd just like to thank all of you for your flexibility. This is a very important distinction that I'm very proud of, and I think all of us should be proud of. Sir?
I just want to say to the staff and the board members that award that's a significant award for our community, and to say that this is all due to really your work and your dedication to KUB and to our community and to our customers. And I don't take it lightly that to be honored by that commission in this way is significant in our community. So again, I just want to just say congratulations and thank you all for what you do for KUB. While I have the microphone, I also want to just congratulate and thank KUB. I know that many folks around the community have been looking at this equity, diversity role that KUB has, and I will tell you, it is number one, very, very popular, but I think it also sends a message that we as an organization are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that this is a really significant first step in making sure that we create not only, as we talk about diversity in terms of serving our clients and customers, but also for the people who work here, that we create an environment where everybody feels like they're respected, valued, and included. And so just want to say to the board, in particular to Gabe, under your leadership, that is a phenomenal, really, step in the right direction in terms of DE&I for our organization. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner. I think if you look at our board, we'd be hard pressed to find another board as diverse as ours, and I would say we've gotten an awful lot of quality in that diversity. So, are there any members of the public who wish to address the board today? Seeing none. Following adjournment of this meeting, the board will have a lunch session that is open to the public to observe. This meeting is now adjourned.